As the Scenic Cyclist, my purpose is to promote physical and mental health through exercise, while encouraging people to experience new and interesting trails and locations. Hello again, it's the Scenic Cyclist. Today, I'm on the White Pine Trail. Once again, if you look back at my past videos, you'll see one of my very first ones was riding the White Pine Trail from Comstock Park to Rockford, Michigan. A trip that I have done many times over the years, commonly with my wife, Mrs. Scenic Cyclist. However, I've always wondered what's north of Rockford. So today what I'm doing is I'm riding the same trail, the same rail trail, which I'll get into. Except today, Mrs. Scenic Cyclist dropped me off further north of Rockford at Howard City. So what I'm doing is I'm riding south on the White Pine Trail from Howard City to Sand Lake. Something I covered on my first video with the White Pine Trail was the history of this trail. As I mentioned, it's a rail trail. It's a former railroad that used to go from, well, this particular segment of the railroad went from Grand Rapids to Cadillac, Michigan. So I'm just doing a piece of it today. But the interesting thing for me, anyway, as somebody who enjoys history, is the fact that almost everything around here has its origins with the lumber industry. Most of the towns around here were built in the early to mid 1800s, or established during those times. Most of the towns around here were established for the lumber industry. Because at that time, and you wouldn't know it by looking around now, this entire area was covered with pine trees and hardwoods that in many cases were 200 years old, 200 feet high, huge trees. And people at the time thought that they could cut them down and they would last forever, and they didn't. So as a result, Michigan doesn't have a whole lot of areas with a whole lot of big trees. However, the town sprung up through here, and gradually the railroad came through somewhere around 1850 to help haul logs, cut trees, as well as wood from the lumber mills to the south, where then they would go off to places like the northeastern United States, as well as Chicago, to build houses and businesses and other buildings as well. In fact, something I brought up on other videos is that a good number of the trees of this part of Michigan were cut down and sawed into lumber to rebuild Chicago after the Great Chicago Fire. So that's some of the history. So sometimes people will ask the question, why are there so many towns along this former railroad? It's because at one point this railroad was that major artery of the lumber industry, and the towns that sprang up were the towns where the lumber people lived. And this rail bed, this track that we're riding today, or this trail that we're riding today, formerly was a railroad that would carry the logs from the northern parts of Michigan into the southern parts of Michigan. So far I've gone about half a mile, maybe a mile. I got about somewhere between 6 and 7 miles to go before I get to Sand Lake. Didn't take long to get to farmland, which no surprise there. Obviously, once the forest was gone, it made all the sense in the world to use this land for farming. And I anticipate I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about what a rail trail is. Now, I've already mentioned this is a former railroad, but let me give you some characteristics for those of you who maybe haven't done this kind of a ride. When we're talking about a rail trail, as you can imagine, it's about going from point A to point B, typically with as few turns as possible, as few curves as possible. On top of that, they tend to be very long, because that's what railroads did. And secondly, from an elevation standpoint, you're not going to find little hills and little valleys. No doubt there are some changes in elevation, but they typically are done very gradually, because once again, that's the nature of a railroad. Another characteristic of a rail trail is they tend to go through a lot of small towns, but not through the middle of downtown. They go off to the side. Many times businesses were built next to the railroad, and sometimes those businesses aren't there anymore. But nonetheless, that's why you see a rail trail typically going right past the edge of a city as opposed to the middle of the city. An important characteristic of this particular trail, once again, the White Pine Trail, going from Grand Rapids to Cadillac, it goes for a distance of approximately 92 miles. And as of a couple of years ago, it is now entirely paved. And what just reminded me of that is the fact I'm looking down here at what I'm traveling on, and it's extremely good shape. Well, very well maintained, fairly new. So whether you have a mountain bike or road bike, this is probably a pretty good alternative. One of the main reasons that I do this is for the physical activity and staying active, doing something that requires much more than sitting on the couch watching TV every day. I'm trying to inspire people, trying to get other people to go out and start riding. Bike riding, easier on the joints than running. This is a great way to get some exercise, whether it's by yourself, with a group of bikers, cyclists, or whether it's with your family. It's a great way to get out, enjoy the outdoors, and get some exercise at the same time. I really can't emphasize how long, straight, and flat the White Pine Trail is. One other thing I failed to mention. I did mention I'm in Michigan. But today is November 14th. Why is that important? Very strange that I would be out riding my bike on November 14th in Michigan. Usually by this time, usually by November, if not late October, my bike would already be stowed away in mothballs. I think what we're seeing right up ahead is Sand Lake. Didn't take very long to get here. So this is Sand Lake, Michigan. Got a few videos or photos of downtown, small town. I looked up the population. The population is roughly 500 people. Although if you extend that out into a broader area outside the village of Sand Lake, you can get more like 1,000 or 1,100 people. Once again, another town that was built here basically for the lumber industry back around in the late 1800s. From what I read, it was at the time considered to be a bedroom community, as in this is where people put their houses or they'd sleep while they were working in the lumber industry a long time ago. And I will bet most of those houses are no longer here, but nonetheless, Sand Lake, Michigan is still a hustling and bustling location. Well, now that we've seen Sand Lake, it's off to Rockford. We have 12 more miles to go before we get to Rockford. Obviously a building that was put up when there was still a railroad here to take advantage of the transportation offered by the railroad. I have no idea what that business might have been or what it is today, but it still stands here as a potential relic of the railroad that once ran through this area. Well, our trail going from Sand Lake, Michigan to Rockford, Michigan looks very much like the trail going from Howard City to Sand Lake. I am shocked. Not really. Very similar, obviously. Once again, as I mentioned in my previous video, one of the reasons I'm kind of excited about this particular ride, I have frequently taken this particular trail from Grand Rapids to Rockford. It's the distance there is about 9 miles one way, and quite frequently my wife and I, sometimes my daughter, will take the White Pine Trail from Comstock Park, which is I guess a suburb of Grand Rapids, to Rockford. Like I said, about a 9-mile ride where we stopped for dinner or drinks or whatever. And then after a brief rest, we head on back to Grand Rapids. However, I've always wondered about the trail north of Rockford, which I had never taken before today. So that's what this is all about. I don't anticipate a whole lot of changes on the trail from here to Rockford. I anticipate also that most of my video is going to be Rockford once I'm entering into the Rockford area. In the meantime, I'll be looking for some nice scenery or anything unique that might be something that you, the viewer, might like to see. Something that just occurred to me. On my left is a road. In fact, ever since I got on the trail at Howard City, there's been a road going parallel to the White Pine Trail. I just looked at my map, and that goes all the way from Howard City all the way to Rockford. So I will be paralleling this road all the way to Rockford. Now, one of the things that makes me think about is the fact that no doubt that road was built when there was still a railroad here, and I'm sure that road was built to parallel the railroad. So gradually, over the last 100 years or whatever, maybe 150 years, as the railroad got used less and less, truck transportation probably took over. And in many cases, the roads were built to parallel or duplicate, or whatever the right word is, the routes that the railroads were taking. So that even though the railroad is gone now, the road remains. A little bit ago I mentioned that there was very little to look at, very little between where I was then and Rockford, Michigan. I forgot about the town of Cedar Springs. It says city limit of Cedar Springs. I'd be surprised if it would be considered a city. But nonetheless, it's a town, it's a village, it's something, but it is a major thing between Sand Lake and Rockford. That looks like a whole town here. And as I've talked about before, The trail goes right along basically the side of the town. Well, we made it through Cedar Springs. Didn't get to see very much of the town, but from a distance, it looked pretty nice. I just checked my map, and we have just about 7 miles to go to get to Rockford. Still got a few miles to go to get to Rockford. I'm surprised how many houses there are in this area that are obviously newer construction. Gives you an idea of just how much this area is growing. I'm sure that this was all wilderness just a few years ago. One other point I'm going to make about this, the fact that it's November 14th, the leaves have fallen. A couple weeks ago, we had amazing colors as the leaves were turning. I wish I would have done this route then. Right now, all we have are the brown of Michigan. But that's all right, it's the way it is. So I just checked my map. We got about 3.5 miles to go. We're in an area of a lot of houses. So I think we're on the outskirts of Rockford right now, but we have about 3.5 miles to go to downtown Rockford, where I'll be meeting Mrs. Scenic Cyclist for dinner at one of our favorite Mexican restaurants, Cinco de Mayo, in downtown Rockford. One thing I'm looking forward to here is, and I've always seen this when I've taken the southern route into Rockford, is that the bike path, the White Pine Trail, goes along the Rogue River through Rockford, which I believe to be I think it's a very scenic river. So I'm looking forward to seeing that very soon. And obviously I will be taking some videos of that. On your left. As I mentioned, we're now traveling along the Rogue River. Rogue River goes all the way into Rockford. In fact, Rockford is built on the Rogue River. Rockford took great advantage of the river with their riverfront area and park. It's one of my main things I like to do in the summer is go into Rockford. They have concerts in the evenings one time a week. My daughter and I go down there where we drink a glass of wine, have one of the hot dogs at one of our favorite places called Dam Dogs, which is next to the dam in Rockford. We have about a mile to go till we get to downtown. As a point of interest, the Rogue River winds through this part of Michigan, through Rockford, then continues south where it empties into the Grand River, which is what Grand Rapids is named after, and flows on to Lake Michigan at the point of Grand Haven. It's quite amazing to me that on November 14th, we have all these people who are out enjoying the outdoors in Michigan. On your left. There is downtown Rockford, which is the target of my ride. I see a margarita in my very near future. That trip down here wouldn't be complete without a visit to the falls, or not to the falls, to the, that trip down here wouldn't be complete without a visit to the dam, which is just there's something about water falling that makes for good photography. This is downtown Rockford. Just want to point out a couple of places. Down there in the corner is the corner bar, famous for their hot dogs. Burned down a few years ago. Had a fire in the kitchen, but it's been rebuilt, and it still is a very popular place to go here in Rockford, Michigan. If we come down here, we'll find one of my favorite restaurants in a place that's formerly the Rockford Hotel, and I can see at the top there it also says Sam's Joint at the top, but now is Uccello's, which is a very popular, I don't know if it's not, I wouldn't call it a chain, it's a group of restaurants here in the Grand Rapids area, and Uccello's here in Rockford is one of the places that my wife and I really enjoy going to. My final destination for today in Rockford, Cinco de Mayo, one of my wife and I, one of our favorite restaurants in the area where we will be meeting very soon to have Mexican food, and of course the margarita that I'm looking forward to. Well, this ends my trip. This particular video started off in Sand Lake, Michigan. We made it all the way to Rockford through Cedar Springs. I hope you take the time to do this trail sometime. If you're looking for some good exercise, some great scenery, and once again, one of my favorite things to do is take this trail into Rockford. There are plenty of places to have a drink or grab something to eat here. I'm the Scenic Cyclist. I hope you've enjoyed this ride. Look forward to my next video. See ya. Please be on the lookout for my next video where I'll cover another great trail around the Grand Rapids area. And please subscribe to my channel, the Scenic Cyclist. Until then,